4th of September, 476 AD, a man sat on a throne he had occupied for less than a year. He was 14 years old. His name was Romulus, the same name as the legendary founder of Rome itself. And on that morning, a barbarian general walked into his court, removed the imperial diadem from his head, and told him to leave. No battle, no siege, no dramatic last stand on the walls of the eternal city. Just a boy, a crown, and silence. The Western Roman Empire, the most powerful political entity the ancient world had ever produced, did not end with a thunderclap. It ended with a quiet administrative act in a provincial palace in Ravenna. And the world it left behind would not recover for 1,000 years. But to understand what was lost on that September morning, we must first understand what Rome actually was. Not the myth, not the marble, the living, breathing machine. At its height, the Roman Empire was not merely a collection of conquered territories, it was a system, an engineered civilization operating at a scale humanity had never attempted before, and would not attempt again for centuries. Stretch a map of the empire across your mind, from the Atlantic coast of Portugal to the banks of the Euphrates in modern Iraq, from the edge of the Scottish Highlands to the scorching sands of the Sahara. 45 million people, perhaps more, all bound together under a single legal framework, a single currency, a single administrative language. The roads alone were a miracle. Over 400,000 kilometers of engineered stone routes connecting every corner of the empire. A merchant in Londinium could ship goods to Alexandria. A military commander in Syria could receive orders from Rome in days. Information, trade, soldiers, and ideas moved with a speed and reliability the ancient world had never known. The cities were extraordinary. Rome itself, at its peak, housed over 1 million people, a population density not seen again in Western Europe until the industrial 19th century. It had running water delivered by 11 aqueducts, public baths, libraries, a postal system, grain shipments from North Africa feeding its urban poor every single month. This was not just power, this was infrastructure. This was civilization made physical, and it had endured for over 500 years. The Romans themselves could not imagine its end. To them, Rome was not an empire in the way we use the word today, a temporary political arrangement that rises and falls. Rome was the natural order of the world, the eternal city. The gods had willed it, the philosophers had justified it, the legions had proven it in blood across 100 campaigns. When Roman writers imagined the apocalypse, they imagined cosmic disasters, stars falling, seas rising, the gods themselves abandoning the heavens. They did not imagine paperwork. They did not imagine a slow administrative unraveling across 2 centuries that nobody noticed until it was already over. That is precisely what made the fall so devastating and so invisible. The fractures did not appear overnight. They had been accumulating for generations, hidden beneath the surface of apparent Roman permanence like cracks in the foundations of a cathedral. The first and most fundamental problem was the one Rome could never solve: the question of succession. The Roman Empire had no stable mechanism for transferring power. The word emperor, imperator, was not even a formal constitutional title in the original sense. It was a military honor, a commander's acclamation. The first emperor, Augustus, had been brilliant enough to drape his absolute power in the language of republican tradition, pretending he was merely the first citizen, the servant of the Senate. It worked because Augustus was a political genius and lived for 45 years in power. But the system he created was built on personal authority, not institutional legitimacy. When a strong emperor died, the question of who came next was answered not by law, but by the loyalty of the legions. And legions, it turned out, had very strong opinions. The 3rd century AD saw the catastrophic consequences of this flaw laid bare. In the 50 years between 235 and 284 AD, Rome burned through over 20 emperors. Most were murdered, some lasted weeks, some lasted months. The empire fractured into competing regional power centers, each with their own claimant, each demanding taxes and military service from an already exhausted population. This was the crisis of the 3rd century. And while Rome survived it, the survival came at an enormous cost. To pay for the constant military campaigns, emperors debased the currency. Silver coins became silver-washed bronze. Inflation erupted. The sophisticated monetary economy that had knitted the empire together began to break down. Merchants stopped trusting coins. Trade contracted. Cities that had hummed with commercial life grew quieter. The tax burden on the remaining productive population became crushing. Farmers abandoned their land rather than face the collectors. The great estates of the wealthy swallowed up small holdings as desperate peasants traded their freedom for protection. The independent Roman farmer, the backbone of both the legions and the economy, was disappearing. But Rome adapted. It always had. The Emperor Diocletian, seizing power in 284 AD, enacted sweeping reforms. He divided the empire administratively into East and West, each with its own emperor and deputy. He reorganized the military. He attempted to control inflation through price edicts. He restructured the tax system. It worked. The empire stabilized. The 3rd century nightmare receded. But the solution contained the seeds of a new problem. By formally dividing the empire, Diocletian had acknowledged what the previous century had demonstrated violently. The empire was simply too large for one man to govern. The division that was meant to strengthen Rome would within 2 generations become permanent. Constantine, who reunified the empire in 324 AD, made 2 decisions that would echo through the centuries. The first was the adoption of Christianity as the favored religion of the empire. Within a generation, the ancient polytheistic civic religion of Rome, the rituals, the sacrifices, the festivals that had bound Roman identity together for centuries, was being systematically dismantled. A new spiritual framework was being installed, one that would survive Rome itself and reshape the world. The second was the founding of Constantinople on the Bosphorus in 330 AD. A new Rome in the east, perfectly positioned to command the wealthy provinces of Greece, Asia Minor, and the Near East. Constantine called it the New Rome. He meant it as a complement to the old. His successors understood it as a replacement. When Constantine died and the empire was once again divided among his sons, the pattern became clear. The wealth, the population, the trade networks, the administrative competence, they were drifting eastward. The Eastern Empire, centered on Constantinople, was increasingly where the vitality of Roman civilization actually lived. The Western Empire, by contrast, was inheriting the problems. The Rhine and Danube frontiers stretched for thousands of kilometers. Beyond them, in the vast forests and plains of Germania and the Eurasian steppe, the world was in motion. Climate shifts were pushing peoples westward and southward. The Huns, erupting out of Central Asia in the late 4th century with a military technology and ferocity that shocked even hardened Roman commanders, were pushing everyone ahead of them. The Goths, Germanic peoples who had long lived in contact with Rome, who had traded with Rome, who had served in Roman armies, were now arriving at the Danube frontier not as raiders, but as refugees. Hundreds of thousands of them, entire peoples seeking shelter inside Roman borders from the storm coming from the east. The Roman Empire had absorbed foreign peoples before. It had made citizens of Gauls, Spaniards, Africans, and Syrians. Roman identity was, at its best, a civic identity rather than an ethnic one. The Emperor Caracalla had extended citizenship to virtually every free person in the empire in 212 AD. But the scale was now different, and the circumstances were different, and the empire itself was different. The request by the Visigoth leader Fritigern to cross the Danube with his people in 376 AD was granted, but the Roman officials responsible for their settlement were corrupt and incompetent. The refugees were exploited, humiliated, and starved. Dogs were sold to them as food in exchange for their children as slaves. The Visigoths rebelled, and at the Battle of Adrianople in 378 AD, they annihilated a Roman army. The Emperor Valens himself was killed, the first Roman emperor to die in battle against a foreign enemy in over a century. Adrianople was not the end, but it was the moment the empire's immune system began to fail visibly. The Goths were settled inside the empire, not as absorbed citizens, but as a semi-autonomous military force, foederati, fighting under their own leaders, for Roman pay, but not subject to Roman law. Rome had invited an army to live inside its body. Over the following decades, the pattern accelerated. More groups crossed the frontiers. The Western army became increasingly composed of barbarian soldiers led by barbarian generals. Men like Stilicho, the half-Vandal general who effectively ran the Western Empire for a decade, were Rome's most capable defenders and also symbols of how thoroughly the old boundaries had dissolved. The sack of Rome in 410 AD by Alaric's Visigoths was not militarily decisive. The city was occupied for 3 days, looted, and the Visigoths departed. Rome as a physical city survived, but the psychological impact was incalculable. For 800 years, the city of Rome had not been taken by a foreign enemy. 8 centuries of walls, legions, and the implicit promise of Roman invincibility. Saint Jerome, writing from Bethlehem when the news reached him, captured the shock of the Roman world. The city which had taken the whole world was itself taken. The Augustine of Hippo, one of the greatest minds of the late Roman world, spent 13 years writing The City of God, partly in response to the sack, addressing those who blamed Christianity for weakening Rome's divine protection. His answer redefined the terms entirely. The earthly city, Augustine argued, was always temporary. Only the city of God endured. It was a philosophically profound response. It was also, whether Augustine intended it or not, a preparation for the world without Rome. Because that world was coming. The Western Empire spent the next 60 years consuming itself. A rapid succession of weak emperors, real power concentrated in the hands of barbarian military commanders who made and unmade rulers at will. The tax base continued to shrink as territory was ceded or simply ceased to be administered. Britain was effectively abandoned in 410 AD. The legions withdrawn, the province left to defend itself. Gaul was fragmenting into Gothic and Burgundian kingdoms. North Africa fell to the Vandals in 429 AD, severing the grain supply that had fed Rome for centuries. The empire was not conquered. It was dissolved. Territory by territory, function by function, the administrative machinery stopped operating. Not because of a single catastrophic defeat, but because the resources to maintain it no longer existed, and the will to reconstruct them had exhausted itself. By the 460s, the Western emperors controlled little more than Italy. They were political fictions maintained because someone found them useful. The real power rested with men like Ricimer, a half-Visigoth, half-Suevian general of extraordinary ability who dominated the Western court for 16 years, appointing and disposing of emperors like pieces on a board. When Ricimer died in 472 AD, the last restraining mechanism collapsed entirely. In the 4 years between 472 and 476, the Western Empire cycled through 4 emperors. The last of them was placed on the throne by the barbarian general Odoacer, who commanded the Germanic troops that now constituted essentially the entire Western Roman army. His name was Romulus Augustulus. He was a child. His father, a Roman general of Hunnic descent named Orestes, had placed him there as a puppet. The name was bitterly ironic. Romulus, the founder's name, Augustulus, the little Augustus. Odoacer had been promised land in Italy for his troops. Orestes refused. It was a miscalculation that cost him everything. Odoacer moved quickly. Orestes was captured and executed. The boy emperor was cornered in Ravenna. Rome's capital had been moved there decades earlier for its defensive position amid the marshes of the Po Delta. And then Odoacer did something that surprised everyone. He did not kill the boy. He pensioned him off. Romulus Augustulus was sent to a comfortable villa in Campania with a generous allowance. He was simply removed. Odoacer sent the imperial regalia, the diadem, the purple robes, the symbols of Western imperial authority, to Constantinople. The message to the Eastern Emperor Zeno was explicit. There is no longer a need for a separate Western emperor. One emperor in the East is sufficient. Zeno accepted the regalia. He had no army to send west. even if he had wanted to. He gave Odoacer the title of patrician, a Roman honorific, and recognized the reality on the ground. And with that exchange of symbols and letters between two courts, the Western Roman Empire ceased to exist. Not with a battle, not with fire, with paperwork. The world that remained was recognizably Roman in its fragments and profoundly alien in its wholeness. The cities still stood, the aqueducts still ran for a while, Latin was still spoken. The Catholic Church, which had grown within the empire's administrative skeleton, now occupied that skeleton, bishops inheriting the civic roles of Roman governors, church councils replacing imperial assemblies, the Pope in Rome claiming an authority that no Western emperor now existed to contest. The barbarian kings who divided the Western territories were not, in most cases, conquerors who despised Rome. They were admirers who had fought to be part of Rome for generations. Odoacer styled himself in Roman administrative tradition. The Ostrogothic king Theodoric, who replaced him, ruled Italy for 30 years with remarkable sophistication, maintaining Roman law, Roman administration, and Roman culture. He employed Roman senators. He corresponded with Eastern emperors. He called himself a Roman king. But something was gone that could not be replicated by imitation. The unified system, the roads maintained by imperial engineers, the grain shipments organized by imperial bureaucrats, the currency backed by imperial authority, the law enforced by imperial courts, that system required the empire to function. Without the empire, each piece slowly deteriorated. The population of Rome itself collapsed. From over 1 million at its peak, the city shrank to perhaps 20,000 people by the 7th century. The forums fell silent. The aqueducts crumbled. Cattle grazed in the shadow of the Colosseum. The marble monuments were stripped for building material. Trade contracted. Literacy declined. The accumulated knowledge of centuries became inaccessible to generations who lacked the educational institutions to transmit it. The sophisticated agricultural techniques, the engineering manuals, the medical texts, the philosophical works, much of it did not disappear overnight. It faded slowly as the networks that had preserved and transmitted it dissolved. This is what a civilization dying actually looks like, not an explosion. A long, slow dimming of lights, one by one, across a vast and darkening landscape. The Eastern Empire, Byzantium, as later historians called it, though its inhabitants always called themselves Romans, survived for another 1,000 years. Constantinople did not fall until 1453 AD, when Ottoman cannons breached its walls. For a millennium, it preserved the flame of Roman law, Greek philosophy, and Christian theology, transmitting them eventually back to a Western Europe that had slowly, painfully rebuilt itself. The fall of the West was not the end of the story. It was a rupture, a violent discontinuity that forced humanity to rebuild from fragments what had taken centuries to construct. And rebuild it did. The medieval world that emerged from the ruins was not simply a diminished Rome. It was something new. Different political structures, different social arrangements, different relationships between rulers and ruled, between the individual and the community, between the sacred and the secular. The very chaos of the post-Roman centuries created conditions in which new institutions, new ideas, and eventually new forms of human organization could emerge. The Renaissance was, in part, a conscious act of recovery, humanists reaching back across a millennium of fragmentation to reconnect with the intellectual inheritance of Rome and Greece. The legal systems of modern Europe are built on Roman foundations. The language of law, science, and scholarship for centuries was Latin. The organizational structure of the Catholic Church preserved Roman administrative patterns that shaped European governance for 1,000 years. Rome fell, but it never entirely disappeared. On that September morning in 476 AD, a 14-year-old boy handed over a crown he had never truly worn and walked out of history into comfortable obscurity. He lived out his days in that Campanian villa, his name Romulus, carrying the unbearable weight of what had ended. We do not know when he died. We do not know what he thought about in those quiet years in his golden exile, as the world that had made his name meaningful slowly transformed into something unrecognizable. Perhaps he understood nothing of what had happened. Perhaps that is the cruelest part of it. Civilizations rarely announce their endings. They do not send final dispatches or ring final bells. They simply continue until one day you look up and realize the thing you thought was permanent has become a memory. The roads are still there, but no one maintains them. The laws are still written, but no one enforces them. The name is still spoken, but the reality behind it has dissolved into something else entirely. We inherit the roads, we speak the language, we live inside the legal and institutional frameworks that Roman civilization, for all its brutality and brilliance, made possible. The question worth sitting with is not how Rome fell. Empires fall, systems collapse. That is the rhythm of history. The question is what we are building, and whether we are paying attention to the cracks. I'm Reborn History Vault, watching the past so we can understand the present. And together, we keep history reborn. I'll see you in the next era.